Coach Prime is headed to Netflix for a brand new documentary coming out in 2026. All I got to say about that is get your popcorn ready. And this new edition of Baylor Price Media Live, Steve Kim joins the show to break down a huge commitment from 2026 five-star offensive lineman Jackson Cantwell as he commits to Miami, and he calls out Pete Nakos and On3 Sports in the process. Man, I can't wait to discuss that with him. Voice of the Baylor Bears and Baylor's assistant athletic director, John Morris, joins the show to talk all things Baylor Bears football. And he was on the call for Colorado's Hail Mary this past season, Colorado versus Baylor, where Shedeur threw it up and LeJohntay Wester came down with it, and he was on the call. So we're going to get his take on that as well. Join us as we are live here on Baylor Price Media Live. This is going to be a great show. I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to another edition of Baylor Price Media Live.
Baylor Price Media, I like it.
Welcome back to a special edition of Baylor Price Media Live. This is going to be a very, very special show today. In the first half of the show, we got Baylor Assistant Athletic Director and the voice of the Baylor Bears, John Morris, joining the show to talk all things Baylor Bears football and Big 12 football. We also, in the second half of the show, I got the very special treat of having the Korean Cosell and host of Jason Whitlock's Fearless, Steve Kim, joining the show to talk all things Miami Hurricanes football, including Jackson Cantwell, 2026 five-star offensive lineman, committing to Miami in what some are really surprised by. But, man, I think with the offensive line coach they have, it doesn't come to a surprise to me by any bit. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring in our special guest. And if you're watching, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and become a member of the Baylor Price Media Army today. Without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in our special guest here. Baylor Assistant AD and voice of the Baylor Bears, John Morris, joins the show. John, how you doing, man? Happy Wednesday. I can't thank you enough for joining. Happy Thursday. Excuse me.
What day is today? There's a lot going on. Bailey, it is great. Man. It is great to be with you. Things are going well. We're cruising through the spring here at Baylor University. Graduation is this weekend, but we got a lot going on. So it's great to visit with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, it's May. I'm a football guy, so we're almost to the season. We're getting there. Got to get through the summer here in the heat a little bit. But, man, John, I can't thank you enough for joining. I really appreciate you joining, man. And I cover the Colorado Buffaloes with an alumnus of Colorado named Matt McChesney. And, we were, I think Colorado versus Baylor this past year was one of the most electric college football games I've ever had the chance to watch. Obviously, the Hail Mary, Shedeur to LeJohntay at the end here was unbelievable play. I mean, unbelievable. You were on the call for this. Kind of take us through this moment and your reaction, because I thought you did an unbelievable job on the call. Even though you're on the Baylor side here, I thought you did an unbelievable job on the call here. Take us through that play. What went through your mind when you saw that happen, and then the ending of that game as well? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, what you said, but we probably have a different memory of that game than you do.
Yes, absolutely.
It was just very disappointing the way Baylor lost that game. Great game. It was a great TV game. It was kind of a late night on a Saturday. Not great weather conditions, if I remember right. But it was a great game and got it to overtime. And, Baylor really put pressure. What I remember about the game, number one, is Baylor really put a lot of pressure on Shedeur Sanders all night. I think we had 8 sacks in that game. I think that's right, 8 sacks. So really put pressure on him, but he just kept coming back. To his credit, we would get to him, our defense would get to him, but he would just keep coming back. And that was an example of what happened in that overtime, what turned out to be the game-winning touchdown pass. He got outside. We put pressure on him again. He got outside containment. And I remember right after the game, Coach Dave Aranda pointing out one of our guys, defensive end, who was in the wrong spot, should have contained outside, and he went inside, and that gave Shedeur a little bit of an opening, and that's all he needed, and threw the touchdown pass that gave Colorado the win. So really a disappointing loss for Baylor, and I think a great win for Colorado at that point in the season.
Yeah, Colorado really needed that win. I mean, all the heat coming from the Nebraska loss 2 weeks earlier. Colorado comes into it. They really needed that, and I was as someone who covers the Buffaloes. It really shocked me. I thought they really struggled in the way they played. I thought Baylor came out and really went after Colorado. I think the most glaring thing to me in that game was Baylor's special teams. Baylor executed on all fronts on special teams, and that's what ultimately I think kept them ahead in that game for the most part. Let me ask you, going fast forward ahead to the NFL draft, you've seen Shedeur Sanders going in the 5th round. Travis Hunter goes to the Jaguars at number 2. Were you surprised at all that Shedeur fell? Are you happy that Travis Hunter got drafted so high? What were your thoughts on that whole process?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was just looking at it from the outside, kind of from a Big 12 perspective. Yeah. And it was interesting that Shedeur kind of became the story, in the draft as he dropped lower than a lot of people thought. I think Travis Hunter is terrific. I think he'll be a great representative of Colorado and of the Big 12 in the NFL, and wherever he plays, I think he's just going to be great. So happy for him, that he was picked so high. And then Shedeur, probably just getting into camp was all he needed, and now he's got that opportunity, and we'll see what he does in Cleveland.
Absolutely. Well said. And I agree with you. And now, in my opinion, it's time for Shedeur to go to work. He's got a long battle ahead of him, 4 quarterbacks in that room, one of which Joe Flacco, I think he's going to really be able to learn from. And hopefully Joe Flacco can mentor him, coach him out of some of the bad habits. And Shedeur can excel in Cleveland, because I think ultimately he's going to find a way to get on the field in Cleveland at some point this season, next season, at some point. But John, I can't thank you enough for joining. I wanted to ask you about something on the Baylor NIL and transfer portal kind of front here. So about 6 or 7 months ago, we saw coaches Baylor wear the "We Pay Players" shirts here, and I thought this was a really, really innovative and smart kind of way here to kind of talk about and make light of and get some attention to Baylor football in the NIL and recruiting standpoint. This is really creative. Obviously, Dave Aranda said we're paying players when he was asked about it. I think Big 12 pre-season meetings or something like that. But what I wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts on this when you saw this, and then your thoughts on the state of college football as a whole with the NIL and transfer portal and the way it's changed over the last 6 or 7 years?
Ooh, that's a wide-ranging question there. But about the shirts, Coach Aranda, if you could ever have him on, you'd love to visit with him, because he's just as honest as the day is long. If you ask him a question, he's going to give you an honest answer. And there's not one bit of coach speak in him. So it makes it interesting, the interviews that I have with Coach Aranda and our coaches shows, interviews with him. Usually if I ask a question, I sort of know what the answer is going to be or the direction the answer will be. But sometimes with Coach Aranda, it goes a completely different direction. And it's great. I mean, and it's really refreshing, to hear a coach that really listens to what your question is and then will really answer your question. So that's where that all came from. The Big 12 Media Days, which were in Las Vegas last year. It just, one of the question about NIL and paying players, and Dave just flat out said, we pay players, which was stating the obvious that everybody does now. But our guys with NFL and NIL, David Kay leading the charge, thought, hey, let's play into this. Dave Aranda said it. Let's print some T-shirts and sell great move, and sell the T-shirts, and then the money that comes from that goes into NIL also. So our coaches were wearing those shirts. We pay players, and it's just again, everybody does it, but I think to see it and see our coaches wearing that on a T-shirt, it just kind of hits you between the eyes. Oh yeah, okay, Baylor's doing this. Every other team is doing this, and it's legal. And it also says that Baylor's in the game, in the NIL game, and we're not going to take a back seat to anybody. So I think that's where all that came from, and sort of the impetus with the T-shirts. Your other part of the question was, changing world and landscape of college athletics. And, it's for a guy that's been around as long as I have, I guess it's you have to change with the times. Our coaches are doing that, and it's just a different world these days. And you just have to be able to conform and to change and adjust. And I think that's what we're all doing. And I would say this also, Baylor has done a really good job. Baylor in general, campus athletics, football, all sports, has done a really good job of adjusting to the new world of college athletics. And, we're getting a good share of our players. We're keeping a good share of our players. So I think we're in the game, and we're in the game to stay, because that's where the game is right now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I thought this was a really creative way. I think there's a lot. I don't think a lot of people that watch college football really understand the way it's changed. And the colleges playing players, or collectives paying players, is kind of a foreign concept to them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I thought when Baylor did this, they just came out and flat out said it and ran with it. I thought it was a great, marketing thing. It's a great way, in my opinion, to help, get recruits to Waco. I thought it was great overall. I just, I covered this about 6 months ago, and I was like, man, this is a really great move. So I wanted to ask you. I appreciate your perspective on that.
Yeah.
Let's move forward and talk about Baylor as we get closer to the season here in the Big 12. You guys got a quarterback coming back, Sawyer Robertson, who we saw play last season against Colorado, and this is his first full offseason where he's really gets to develop and work as the starter here. And he actually talked about that in a video here. Take a listen. We'll get your take.
Preparing the exact same as I've always prepared. The offseason is when you kind of get ahead of everybody and work, and stepping up into that leadership role, just getting a head start on that now is probably the biggest difference, because going into the season being the guy is different than like when in the middle of the season, kind of that like change that happened. I'm prepared.
Definitely. Let me ask you about Sawyer's potential going into the season. I think he has the potential to be a really, really great player, one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12 conference here. What are your thoughts on his potential going into the season?
Really, really high. High expectations for him. Number one, he is a great man. He is a great fit for Baylor. Good Christian man. Yep. I see him at church. We go to the same church, and I see him just about every Sunday. And that's the 9 o'clock service, not even the 11 o'clock service on Sundays. But he is there, and a group of his teammates are there with him every week. So good Christian man, and great fit for Baylor in that respect. And a guy that came in, transferred, as you know, from Mississippi State here, and really had to battle for the job. We had a guy named DeQuan Finn that transferred in from Toledo, and not that he was handed the job, but a lot of folks thought it was DeQuan's job to lose. Right. And he got hurt, and Sawyer stepped in and never gave it back. He really grabbed hold of the reins, and he had an outstanding year last year, and really behind him was a true freshman quarterback, Nate Bennett, and that's it. And so Sawyer really needed to stay healthy and stay on the field, and he did for the entire year. And you remember this, we started 2-4, and it was like, oh no, this is the last thing that Coach Aranda needs. And then went on a 6-game winning streak, into the regular season winners of 6 straight, finished 8-4, lost the bowl game to a good LSU team. But it was a great turnaround by the team, and Sawyer was a huge, huge part of that. And I'm glad he's back. And what he talked about in that clip was he now knows he's the starter, he's the man, and he's taken that through spring practice. He'll take it through the summer, and he's the man when they, tee it up and start practice in August also.
Definitely. He's the man. And I think when it comes to the Big 12 this season, it's going to be really interesting. Last season, I don't think anybody could have expected, going into the season, Oklahoma State was favored, BYU's at the bottom, blah, 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 blah. The whole conference just flipped. Right. I don't think anybody could have predicted that. Now, going into this season, I think it's going to be really interesting. I think Texas Tech is a team to watch, Baylor as well. There's several teams. It's kind of wide open, in my opinion, in the Big 12. I think I interviewed Joel Klatt here this past season. He talked about how the Big 12 cannibalized itself. I think it's a very, very true statement. Now, going into this season, how do you feel about Baylor going into the conference? What do you like? How do you like their chances?
I think good. I think we got a lot of returners, and that'll be good. And then you build around Sawyer Robertson at quarterback. You build around Keaton Thomas, linebacker that's returning for us. And I think good. I think I don't know where we'll be picked. Maybe middle of the pack is what I would guess in the Big 12. But, middle of the pack is, 8th in this league. So, but it's a very good league. And there's so many good teams and so many good coaches in this league. And it really doesn't matter where you're picked. Like Arizona State last year, ended up winning the conference and going to the CFP and had a great year. And they were picked very low in the league preseason a year ago. So for Baylor, I think we'll be picked higher this year than we were a year ago. And then they just got to go out and prove it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And are there any other teams that you watch in the Big 12 as competitors to Baylor? I mean, it's going to be interesting. You got Rich Rod back over at West Virginia.
Yeah.
Who knows what Colorado's going to look like? Texas Tech is spending all this money, but will it equate to on-the-field success? Are there any other teams that you see as contenders or favorites in the Big 12 this season?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're talking in May, and
Yeah, it's really early.
Deep dive into all these schools. But I would say Arizona State, they've got a lot of momentum, off the year they had last year, and I think they've got a lot back, including their quarterback this year. Kansas State, I think Chris Kleiman's just terrific, as their head coach there. I'm leaving people out. TCU, Sonny Dykes, I think they're going to be really good. And you said Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech may be a real team to watch with Joey McGuire, the former Baylor assistant out there, and they have stepped heavily into the portal themselves. So I think Tech, may be set up for a really good season also.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. Texas Tech's been making all kinds of noise. Joey McGuire down there in Lubbock. I think they're in the top 5 in schools, spending the most money in the portal. I think they have one of the better transfer portal classes, if not one of the top 5 in the country, I believe. I think they've been making some serious moves and noise this offseason. John, before I get you out of here, and I can't thank you enough for joining, I wanted to just talk about your career a little bit. You are known as the voice of the Baylor Bears here. In 2019, you were named Texas Co-Sportscaster of the Year. And, I think you do, like I mentioned with the Colorado versus Baylor, I think you do a hell of a job. Talk about your career a little bit and, some of the accolades, become a Sportscaster of the Year and stuff like that. Go ahead.
Well, number one, it's not about me. I'm just fortunate and blessed to be in this position, and I really love it. There's nothing I'd rather be doing. I learned from the best. A man named Frank Fallon was our voice of the Bears for 42 years, and I worked with Frank for 8 years, and that was the best learning experience ever. That started in 1987, and then Frank had to retire really early because of Parkinson's, and I was fortunate enough to follow him. But anything we do, positive, good broadcast, I like to give Frank credit because he deserves credit for that. So Frank was just the best, and what we try to do now is live up to the high standard that he set doing these games for all those years. And I'm in this position now. Someone will follow me, but Frank will always be the voice of the Baylor Bears. So he was absolutely the best there ever was. But it's a great job. It's been a lot of fun. I love being here this length of time because we built some relationships that are lifetime relationships with student athletes, with coaches, and I get to work with really all the sports. I'm an employee of the athletic department, so I get to work with all the sports over the course of the year, and I really, really like that. So couldn't be a better job, for me than what I'm doing, and I'm just very blessed to be in this position.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you're so humble. Just hearing you talk about that is really, really great. My final question for you, and I can't thank you enough for joining. If you had to give advice to yourself at 22 years old, I'm 22 years old, and I'm just curious.
Okay.
If you had to give advice to yourself at 22 years old, just in your ascent in the sports media space, so to speak, what would that be and why?
Oh, that's a good question. So at 22, I was working at a TV station here in Waco, the CBS affiliate, right out of school, right out of Baylor. I was working there. And I wasn't in sports yet, but I was headed that direction, knew I wanted to do sports. So looking back on that, I would say look for opportunities and take opportunities that are presented to you, even if they stretch you. And, I think back of one time they had boxing here in Waco, and they said, we need somebody to announce boxing. He said, hey, Morris, can you do that? I'd never done boxing. I didn't know that much about it, but I said, I can do that.
Absolutely.
You never say no. That's one of the things. You never say no to a broadcasting opportunity. But I would say look for opportunities like that to stretch yourself, and it's going to help you. It's going to pay off in the future. And looking back, that would have been the advice I would have given myself at 22.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's great advice, and I appreciate that. I got a boxing genius coming on here and after you, so that's so ironic you said that. But, John, it's been an absolute honor getting the chance to interview you. I can't thank you enough for joining, man. I hope you have a great Thursday, and thank you so much for joining.
You as well. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great Thursday. Shout out to Baylor assistant AD and voice of the Baylor Bears, John Morris, for joining the show, giving us that insight. He was on the call for Colorado versus Baylor and that Hail Mary that Shedeur threw to LeJohntay. So getting his perspective on that, I thought he did a great job on the call. We talked about Sawyer Robertson, their quarterback going into the season, and so much more. Man, what a great interview. Shout out to John Morris for joining. We waste no further time. Let's get into it. Our next guest is here, and our very special guest, I can't thank him enough for joining. This is somebody who I really look up to in this space, and I think does a hell of a job. Co-host of Jason Whitlock's Fearless and co-host of the 3 Knockdown Rule with Mario Lopez. Steve Kim joins the show. Steve, it's an absolute honor. I can't thank you enough for joining. How you doing?
Bailey, good afternoon to you.
Thank you, man. I can't thank you enough for joining. And, man, big news, big week for the Canes here, man. I can't thank you enough for joining. Let's get into it here. So, 5-star offensive lineman class of 2026, Jackson Cantwell is committed to Miami, and when some are surprised by, but I think it's a great move, great get for Mario Cristobal and the Canes here. Steve, let's start initially. What are your thoughts on this move? What does this mean for the Miami Hurricanes? And what's your thoughts? Go ahead.
You know, I go back over 20 years ago, when message boards were relatively new. Al Gore had just invented the internet. I remember the summer of 1999 that there were rumors percolating that Butch Davis had made inroads with a young man by the name of DJ Williams at a Concord de la Salle out in Northern California, #1 team in the country. They didn't lose a game for like 15 years. Mm-hmm. It's a historically good program. And that's when Miami was still kind of rebuilding under Butch, coming off the throes of probation, but he was by far the #1 player. At age 16 or 17, John Madden said if there's ever a high school player that can play in the NFL straight out of graduation, it would be him. Mm-hmm. So Miami ends up having a decent year, but Butch was unbelievable at closing. There's 2 things Butch Davis could do. He could identify where a young man was going to be physically in 5 years and project, and then he could also close. And when they got DJ Williams to actually come to Miami, that really marked a signal that Miami was once again a player on the national scene. And even though a couple years ago, Miami's had 5-star players like Francis Mawanoa, Samson Okunlola, Justin Scott last year, they've never actually had the #1 player since DJ Williams. So this is big from a symbolic standpoint. And now you got to get him to be able to play. And I just think the funniest story, and it's been talked about a lot, is the NIL. Hey, guys, the NIL is a thing. Everyone's getting paid. And if you're a top 50 player, you're getting paid a lot. And I thought it was very interesting that the young man himself actually called it a slanderous narrative. Those are his own words, slanderous narrative, that I only went to Miami for the NIL. Let's not be naive. The NIL is a factor because money matters. But I think the key figure here that nobody's really talking about from a national perspective is our offensive line coach, Alex Mirabel. He's outstanding. He's one of the best in the country. He's the one that was the architect of Penei Sewell's development. Yes. And Miami, the last couple of years, has had some NFL draft choices. Jalen Rivers is the latest one. Sent a couple guys that made rosters, Matt Lee and JVR Cohen. And then Markel Bell and Mawanoa of this upcoming draft in 26 will probably have their names called, I think, relatively early.
I agree with you. Absolutely. And I had the chance to meet Coach Maribel in high school. He was coming to coach up a guy, teammate of mine named Levi Rogers. And I think his, impact when it comes to developing offensive line talent, I don't think a lot of those really realize, because I think he's one of the best offensive line, coaches in college football. Throw him up there, Bill Beatenbaugh, Coach Cap over at Alabama, and several others. But I think his impact when it comes to developing players, you just mentioned Penei Sewell, several others. You got a kiddo down there in Miami they just brought in last year who's probably, like you just mentioned, probably going to go in the top 10. I think he's a hell of a player. But you brought it up. Jackson Cantwell calls out Pete Nakos and On3 Sports over their reporting of NIL and college football, and their reporting the situation. Steve, take a listen.
Schools that didn't win your services today, they'll throw money in there. They'll say this school got money whipped. When I've spoken to you, you said all you wanted your representation to do was to make things equal. What was the choice? Was there one bid that was higher than the other, or what do you feel comfortable talking about maybe giving your response on your side of this thing is that money ruled the day here?
Well, I think my response to it is it's not the same narrative people like Pete Nakos are pushing right now. I mean, I think there's just a false narrative that's why I'm choosing. And I think that, I mean, I think relationships won out with Miami. That was kind of what did it for me. I mean, they spent the most time with me. They put the most effort into recruiting me. I mean, I've got a lot of skin in the game with all these schools as far as like getting represented by Drew and making sure that I'm going to be fairly compensated. And I think every school has done a good job of that and being accommodating with that. And I think that anyone who would say otherwise about how I've done my recruitment has been just misled.
Damn, I love it. I mean, it's honest and real. People that have a problem with it. This is the new Asian day and age of college football. But Steve, what were your thoughts on Cantwell calling out Pete Nakos and on three here? Surprising, but I'm with it.
Well, Jackson is a relatively, I would say, genius level teenager. If you actually look at his ACT score, I believe as a sophomore he had already qualified. His two parents are Olympians.
33 as an eighth grader.
I think he's a highly advanced young man mentally. Comes from good stock, and I did find it interesting that he named out a reporter individually. Now, Nakos, look, I trust Nakos as a source. Nico Yamilivava. I know I butchered that name. He nailed that story.
Yes,
there were a lot of anger at him, but there was not a lot of derision in terms of did he get the story right. True. Here's where I think the Miami fans have a problem, and I think it's justified. To make it sound like Miami is the only program to pay seven figures to unknown high school recruits across the board is wrong. There's a certain amount of programs in the NIL space that are at a different level, and they do it through either big boosters or a collective or a combination of both. The bottom line is this, and Coach Sanders, your guy, Coach Prime in Colorado, called it out faster than anybody, and he was more honest than any coach. He said, this is pay for play. This is pay for play, and it's not NIL, because the reality is there's less than 5 college football players, if they take off their helmets and they're in street clothes, if they walk down Times Square in New York, that anyone would recognize them.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the truth. This is pay for play, and Coach Sanders is now saying, I'd like to have a salary cap of some sort, because he understands where this is going. And Colorado right now at this moment may not be on that tier where they can outbid somebody for a coveted player.
That's true.
But I don't think that Georgia or anyone else has offered, certainly Oregon, they have deep pockets. They are big into the NIL game. I would bet dollars to donuts that the Miami offer is probably in line with Oregon and Georgia. I don't think it's a situation where they're bidding 3 times more than anybody else. This came down to development, track record, and the fact that Mario Cristobal, as a coach, he emphasizes offensive line play. And then looking ahead to next year, if things go as expected and hoped, there will be 3, if not 4, starting jobs open on that offensive line for Miami, including both tackles. And there's still a question if Jackson is going to be a left tackle or a right tackle. I think that still has to be figured out. And so that's going to be interesting to see if he really is a day one starter.
Yeah, and definitely something to watch. Starting as a true freshman, it's going to be interesting. I think he's a hell of a player, and we've seen true freshman offensive linemen go in and have success. You just mentioned Colorado; they had Jordan Seaton, true freshman offensive lineman, ended up being a true freshman All-American, as well as Cash Cleveland. Throw him into the mix. True freshman All-American as well. But it'll be interesting to see if Cantwell plays as a freshman, starts as a freshman for the Canes, so to speak. Steve, let me ask you, looking at Miami in the ACC this season, how do you feel about their chances in the ACC? How do you feel about Bill Belichick and other teams in North Carolina and other teams in the ACC? How do you feel about Miami's chances this season?
Well, I think this dovetails into what happened a couple days ago. For Mario Cristobal to really ride this momentum and finish this recruiting class off where you're talking about top 3. So now they got to get Derek Cooper. They got to get Calvin Russell. They need more speed. That's another thing I think Miami was missing. Everyone talks about the Miami speed. Bailey, they really have not been really that fast in comparison to the great teams in about 15, 20 years.
Yep.
We have some athletes, but when you look at the teams playing at the upper echelon of the SEC in Ohio State and Texas, they have speed all over. Thought Miami's team last year, we didn't have a guy for as good as Cam Ward was. They did not have a guy on the perimeter that take the top off the defense. Defensive back, they had to rebuild the whole room because, quite frankly, they weren't very good. The two guys that I mentioned would be an upgrade in athleticism. It would put Miami closer to the national level in terms of really competing. But this cannot be a rebuilding year. It does not matter who they lost. They have to be able to win 10-plus games, and at the very least, play Clemson in the or SMU or whoever in the ACC title game. Miami's class last year was very good, and with the two losses to Syracuse and Georgia Tech, it wavered a bit. So the goal for Mario Cristobal to move this thing, and you're saying we're taking steps forward, continue to win double-digit games, but with this addition, be in the ACC title game. Last year, they didn't do that, and it was a little bit of a letdown after being in the top 5 for about 2 months. So that's the key, and I look at the ACC. Clemson's going to be really good, Bailey. Veteran quarterback Cade Klubnik, who finally Garrett Riley was allowed to run his offense. They have 2 young receivers that developed well. Wesco's going to be really good, and their defensive front has NFL guys all over it. So Dabo, for all the heat he takes, Bailey, I've always kind of been a Dabo defender, believe it or not. Even during this down stretch, it's not like they're going 5-7. They're still winning 9-10 games and making playoffs. So they haven't gone that far. They're not. I wouldn't call it a comeback. I believe that they will be a legitimate top 5 team in 2025. Clemson.
Dang. And I'm with you. I think Clemson, is, if anything, is reloaded because I think people kind of like to go at Dabo a little bit, like to say they're not, being consistent because they're like the Steelers. They're not getting over the top and winning a bunch of games, but they're consistent. Sticking in the ACC, your guy Fran Brown and Syracuse, they got a quarterback battle going on. How do you feel about them going into this season? They're leaning heavy into the portal as they do every year, at least at the quarterback position.
Well, they took some losses too, though.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Losing Trevor Pena,
huge loss.
It is huge. Syracuse is one of those programs. They're in a P4, but they're one of those teams that I don't know what their standing is in the NIL. I don't think they're one of the big spenders, but you have Fran Brown, who's a real go-getter, one of the best young coaches. I don't know how long he's going to be there, but there used to be a time that a program like Syracuse could invest 3, 4, 5 years into a player, and they would reap the rewards of that. They lost their best young defensive tackle to Texas. That was a poaching. Trevor Pena put himself up for auction. He's at Penn State. That's where it's tougher than ever to build a program. Where I really wonder if Fran Brown after a while is going to say, you know what? Let me just get to one of the elite jobs where I could be the guy poaching instead of getting poached. But Syracuse, if I'm their administration, and I know how important football is to being a relevant athletic department, because you need to be good in football for the most part, right? I would say, number one, to Fran Brown, how much is it going to take to keep you here long term? And then I'd have to talk to the money men saying, guys, if we want to be in this game, we got to up our NIL ability. Because without that, I think it's almost impossible to compete at the upper levels.
No, yeah, that's a great point, Steve. I think teams, even Syracuse, you just mentioned Colorado. It's going to be teams and coaches like that. I'm not even going to throw Dion saying he's leaving or nothing, but I'm saying it's coaches like that are going to have problems and, potentially be outbid when it comes to players in this NIL and transfer portal here. But Steve, it's been an absolute honor. I know you're busy, man. I can't thank you enough for joining. I'd love to have you on again. It was great getting your perspective on Jackson Cantwell. I hope you have a great Thursday, and we'll see you on JB's show in Whitlock soon.
Absolutely, Bailey. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Have a great Thursday. Shout out to the main man, Steve Kim, boxing genius. You see how smart he is. He's the man. He knows everything. He's somebody who I really, really look up to in this sports media space. Shout out to him for doing a hell of a job breaking down Miami signing 2026 5-star offensive lineman Jackson Cantwell, and what I think is a really, really huge get for Mario Cristobal, Mirabal, and the offensive line coach down there, and the Miami Hurricanes as a whole. Folks, if you're watching, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and become a member. We got a lot to talk about before we get out of here, including Colorado getting their first class of 2026 commitment. We are 100 days until college football. That's something that I'm really excited about. We're almost there. We're almost there. May 15th. We're halfway through the month of May here, and I can't wait, to get to the season, talk all that shit, finally get to watch some college football here, gamble a little bit. It's going to be great. One thing I wanted to bring up here, here's some Big Ten college football win totals here. And I want to just kind of go through and break this down here and break down some teams that I think will get to their win total and won't. Looking at it, starting at the bottom, Purdue and Barry Odom, they got a tough schedule, but I think they can get to 4. Like, I think Barry Odom is a hell of a coach. I think Barry Odom tends to have success wherever he goes. So I would watch for Purdue to get 4. Northwestern lost their quarterback, and I don't know, they got an interesting kind of setup with their field, though, out in the water. So it's fun to watch their games. 3.5, I don't know. Loxley and Maryland, man, they expect them to bounce back, but again, they lost their quarterback. Interesting. Michigan State is a team that I really expect to, take a step up this season with Jonathan Smith at quarterback or head coach. They got the quarterback Aiden, I think Chile's back as well. So I'd watch Michigan State to be better. UCLA and Nico. I don't know. UCLA is interesting. UCLA is a team to watch. Last season, I thought they really shit the bed early in the season, and then come the end of the year, I thought they looked a lot better. Now they got a quarterback, and it sounds like Deshaun Foster is all in on winning now here because he ain't got no time not to win. They're going to get rid of him quick. I watched for UCLA, Nebraska, and Dylan Raiola, 7.5, 8 wins. I could see Nebraska getting there. Nebraska, I thought, had is a solid team. Matt Rule, I think, is a great coach. A coach that it's tough because I thought he was really successful in the non-NIL era. Now he comes into the NIL era and is having to change his ways and adapt to the times. But Nebraska is a team I'd watch. Illinois is going to be legit, and they just extended Bielema, giving them 7.5 or it's like $7.7 million a year. Illinois is a team to watch for sure. Michigan is a big question mark. I don't know. Big question mark for me in Michigan. It's going to be interesting. Are they going to play the kid they're paying all that money to, or are they going to play somebody else? Michigan's going to be a big question mark. Indiana, 8.5. They got Fernando Mendoza, Cal transfer quarterback, starting for them, for Kurt Signetti and them. 8.5. I don't know. I gotta see them play a couple games. I'm not gonna really comment on them too much. I'm a big fan of the quarterback, though. I thought Mendoza played well last season at Cal. Cal went in, I believe, played Auburn. I thought they beat Auburn on the road. Penn State, 10.5. I mean, if they don't win 11 games, James Franklin, I don't know. He ain't got no choice, but. Kind of like Steve said with Dabo, as long as they're consistent, if they win 10 games, James Franklin will be fine. Oregon, they got Dante Moore quarterback. I don't know how much I believe in them, although Oregon has all the money, and Dan Lanning is a hell of a coach. Ohio State, I'm not going to comment on them until they decide who they start at quarterback. But yeah, there's that. Interesting list here as we get closer to the season. We're going to talk a lot of, sports betting and stuff as we get closer to the season here. But folks, we broke this news yesterday on 0 to 60. Coach Prime is starring in a Netflix documentary. There's going to be 3 60-minute episodes. Going to be interesting. You would think with well-off media and Amazon that they just had, you'd think that he spends enough time on camera that he wouldn't go to Netflix. I'm curious if this is a documentary on his life or it's kind of like well-off. I would guess, the latter, kind of highlighting his life here. I think it's going to be a great watch, something to go and take a look at. And shout out to Coach Prime. Good for business, good for Netflix, good for Colorado, good for recruiting. I'm with it here. But let's move forward, talk some Colorado Buffaloes football recruiting here. Before we get out of here on this beautiful Thursday, folks, if you're watching, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, become a member of the Baylor Price Media Army. We've had a great show so far. Baylor Assistant Athletic Director John Morris joined the show in the beginning of the show, and then we had Steve Kim, my main man Steve Kim, join the show in the second half here. Let's break down Jackson Cantwell, 5-star 2026 offensive lineman, #1 player in that class, committing to the Canes in Miami down south. But folks, let's get into it. Some Colorado Buffaloes football recruiting here. So without further ado, Colorado lands a commitment, their first high school commitment in the class of 2026. 4-star tight end Gavin Mueller committing to Colorado. Mueller is 6'6", 250. He's an absolute freak athlete here with an 82-inch wingspan. I think this is a huge get for Colorado, specifically at the tight end position. Colorado's a little light at the tight end position, in my opinion. But going into this season, now they got Zach Atkins, Savell Smalls, who I played against in high school, converted DN coming over from UW. Zayn Duza, who I've interviewed as well, 6'6", 255 freshman. But Mueller, who committed to Colorado, and I think is a big get for the Buffs, actually talked about being recruited by Coach Prime, talked about interacting with Coach Prime, and he said, one of the easiest dudes I've ever talked to. Take a listen to this.
The first thing I noticed, though, is, like, he's just personable. And, you know, he doesn't think he's better than, like, he doesn't act like he's better than you. He doesn't try to look down at people. You know, we're cracking jokes for like an hour. I mean, both times I was there, we had hour-long meetings, me, my dad, and Coach Prime, and then the tight end coaches. So very personable, like one of the easiest dudes I've ever talked to. Like when the conversation gets a little dry, it's usually him, the one who picks it up, you know, which is kind of interesting because he doesn't have to. Like it's a privilege to kind of talk to him. So for him to be so willing and personable, it's pretty cool. And one thing he said to my dad when we walked in is, the second time is he goes, the coolest dad in recruitment. And I think my dad's gravestone might say that. He's going to take that with him.
Man, shout out to Gavin Mueller. But the Buffs got a 6'6", 250 tight end, true Y at the position if you talk of football terms here. Longer kid, got an 82-inch wingspan. I believe he plays basketball here, which you always love. You got to love as a football player that played basketball. It really helps your footwork here. But I thought what he said about Coach Prime, kind of mentioned how he's personable. Coach Prime is a people person. And he really wins people over when he talks to you. And, the biggest takeaway you can take away from that is how he makes you feel. I want to talk about a fellow Colorado tight end signee here, Zayn Duza, who talks about being recruited by Coach Prime and what that's like and paints that picture. Take a listen.
What was that meeting like with you and your folks when you went up there and had that official meeting with Coach Prime before when the offer came and then all of the commitment stuff?
So the first question I asked him was, are you going to be here next year? And he's like, okay. He's like, are you going to come and transfer?
Ooh. And this was back in last season, during the season in September of last year. Man, obviously Prime is still there, but man, I think that response from Prime is cold. Take a listen.
And I was like,
ooh,
I didn't have anything to do with that. He was like, you're more prone to transfer than I am to leave. He's like, I've already went to the NFL. I've already done all that. I don't want the NFL. I'm fine where I am right now. I'll retire right now at CU. I'm fine. I'm staying. That's what he said. I kind of just, the way he said it kind of just it kind of just dropped the bang on me. I was like, I never really thought of that. So yeah.
Damn. And I think hearing that now, 6 months removed from that, it's really telling, because I think a lot of people, when Zayn, committed to Colorado and we put that out and talked about it, people are like, oh, no, he's still leaving. Then all the noise in the offseason with the Raiders job and the Cowboys job and how everyone was saying Prime is leaving. Prime is not going to be in Boulder forever, but he's not going to sit here and bullshit y'all and say he's staying and then leaving. Like, he ain't going nowhere. He just got a massive extension there from Rick George. Shout out to the AD over there. And getting Mueller for the Buffs is a huge commitment here in the tight end room. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him in the future. This will be, I'm guessing, a huge target for Julian Lewis in the future here. And Julian Lewis, 5-star quarterback of Colorado's got, up there right now. I think he's really played a big part when it comes to recruiting. You saw the news and the stories, Colorado having such massive recruiting weekends the last few weekends, Julian Lewis hosting several of those recruits out to his house. I think that's playing a big part and definitely helps, help recruiting and get, fellow teammates out to Boulder here from Julian Lewis. Similar in the way that I thought Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter played a big part when it comes to recruiting, helping get guys, helping attract guys, because, people want to play with Shedeur and Travis, want them to. And now I think it's the same thing with Julian Lewis, Juju. People want to play with Juju, and then they want to play for Coach Prime. But nonetheless, Colorado lands their first high school commitment in the class of 2026 from Gavin Mueller, 4-star tight end, commits to Colorado. Big news there. Folks, before we get out of here, I can't thank you enough for tuning in. It's been a great show here on this fine Thursday. I wanted to talk about some schedule releases. Let's see. So Thursday night football games have come out here. They've released the Thursday night football schedule. And the whole reason I brought this up, in my opinion, I think the Thursday night football schedule the last few years has been shitty. And so now, as we look at these games this season, you open up week 2, Thursday Night Football, Packers and Commanders, Jordan Love versus Jaden Daniels. I think it's going to be a great game. Both teams who I think are great teams, and that'll be a hell of a matchup. Buffalo and Miami. I don't know how I feel about the Dolphins. It's a divisional matchup. I think Josh Allen's got to win a Super Bowl this year. The Bills have got no choice. They got to win a Super Bowl this year. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. Hopefully Tua's playing and healthy, God forbid, for the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel. But that's going to be interesting. Moving to week 4 here, the Seahawks and the Cardinals. That's going to be a great divisional matchup. Typically, you see this matchup at the end of the season with the Seahawks and Cardinals. But nonetheless, the Seahawks actually open up in week 1 and play the 49ers, which is an interesting – I think we've seen that. I think the Seahawks have opened with a division opponent 3 times ever. So for them to open with San Fran, it's going to be interesting. That'll be a good game, good divisional game. Move week 5, another great divisional game, San Fran versus the Rams, although I think the Rams will kick the shit out of the Niners. I don't know. I think the Niners are going to have a down year, and it's May 15th. We'll see by the time the season comes around. Are they going to pay Purdy $52 million like Ed McCaffrey said on JB's show? We'll see. Eagles and Giants. Eagles are coming off a Super Bowl victory, and I think are going to be a hell of a team. The Giants have Russell Wilson at quarterback, and everyone thinks they're going to be horrible. I actually think they're going to be better than people think. I think the Giants have no choice. They have to win 8 games, and I've said this on multiple shows. I think the Giants have to win 8 games, or Brian Dable and that GM are fired. Unless them drafting Jackson Dart and the ownership's made it clear to them that they have time, so to speak, to develop a quarterback. I think the Giants have to win now, and that's for job security. So I expect them to start Russell Wilson. They're paying him $21 million a year, so I'd expect him to start. And I'd look for the Giants to win 8 games. I think the pick from Abdul Carter was great. I think them trading back in the first round and getting the quarterback that they liked the most, Jackson Dart, was great as well for them, and Daboll making that, having the confidence to make that move, I thought was great. So I watched the Giants to win 8 games. Divisional matchup on October 9th. I think the Thursday night schedule here, we're going to keep breaking it down here. I think we could be in for some better games here, but God forbid if I speak too quickly and some of the teams that I think are good are going to be shitty. But I think the Steelers-Bengals, another great divisional game on October 16th. Vikings-Chargers, that's going to be a game to watch for sure. And the Vikings with J.J. McCarthy going to be interesting. Chargers, Herbert, coming off a 12-win season and Harbaugh's first year back in the NFL. They got an absolute stud at running back in Omarion Hampton. I can't wait to see him wearing 8 for the Chargers and running crazy behind that great offensive line out there in Inglewood. Now you move further down. I already talked about the Dolphins, but you got Ravens, Dolphins. I think Derrick Henry will run for 300 yards. Sorry, Mike McDaniel. Raiders are going to be legit. And I'm really excited to see the Raiders. I think Pete Carroll is arguably one of the greatest coaches in the history of football. And, man, I can't wait to see them with Ashton Jeanty, my guy Geno Smith, who I think is top 10 in the NFL, and Jackson Powers-Johnson at center. Their defense is going to be improved, and I think the Raiders are actually going to be a team to watch in that division. It's going to be interesting who's the odd team out in that division because you got Raiders, you got Kansas City Chiefs Queendom. Interesting to see how good they are. The Chargers, who I think are definitely going to be formidable, and the Broncos and Bo Nix, who, in my opinion, I think Bo Nix is going to take a step back this season, as with the Denver Broncos. I do think the Broncos had a good offseason, though, but sophomore slump is a real thing. Teams are going to figure out Bo, and I think any quarterback in their second year takes a step back is going to be him. Oh, man, folks, let's keep moving here. You got Jets and Patriots. I say that's going to be bad just from the past, but it actually could be pretty decent. I like Vrabel. I think he's a great coach, and he's got the culture going. He's trying to really formulate and change the culture in New England. You see several videos of the meetings coming out. He's playing these mind games with them. I'm with it as a coach. That's what you got to do. Bills and Texans is going to be a great game on November 20th, November 28th, Black Friday. I'm like JB when it comes to Caleb Williams, to be honest with you. But I do think the Bears have been trying to make some moves this offseason. I think Ben Johnson, if anything, they're going to be able to run the football because I think they've really revamped that offensive line in Chicago. I think, if anything, the Bears are going to be able to run the football. Caleb Williams is yet to be seen. We'll see. Lions, Cowboys, that'll be a good game in my opinion. Same with the Falcons and Buccaneers, another divisional matchup. And another divisional matchup here, Seahawks-Rams. Man, my Seahawks, man. Sorry, I think it's Stafford's division to lose, and the Rams. I think it's the Rams' year. If I'm being real, I don't know about Seattle. Seattle decided to clear house, so to speak. So Mike McDonald, you better know what you're doing. And that last game is going to be a hell of a game too. So could be in for some better Thursday night football games this year, folks. Man, I can't wait to see it. Hopefully we can have JB stop complaining about Thursday night football now, because I think the matchups, at least, if we're looking at it in May, are a little bit better. Folks, if you're watching, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, become a member of the BPM Army. I wanted to tease a new segment for next week, call-ins and giving your hot take, NFL or college football. Folks, if you're interested in that, a call-in segment for next week and going forward, it would be about 30 seconds each. I drop a link in the chat. You call in, give your hot take in college football. We debate it for about a minute. We get you out of here. Folks, if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and drop it in the chat here. Let me know in the chat and the comments over the videos here the next 4 or 5 days, and we'll be live back here on Tuesday, potentially with the new segment if you guys are interested. So go ahead and let us know in the chat and the comments section if you're interested in that new segment. Call in, giving us your hot takes on NFL or college football here. I think it's a good way to debate, go back and forth. I think a little banter on the show would definitely help. A little debate, hearing from you guys, because you guys are always here supporting. Man, I can't thank you guys all enough watching and supporting. It's been a great show here on this beautiful Thursday. Shout out to Andrew Nance, Adam Marcy, Mike Has Bad Knees, John Lelik, Jamil around the world, and several others for tuning in, always being in the chat. I can't thank you guys enough for tuning in on this beautiful Thursday. Let me know if you guys like to have a new call-in segment next week, because I think it would be a great segment going forward on the show here. Without further ado, we're going to close out here on this beautiful Thursday. We'll be back on Tuesday here with the great show. I got a very special guest planned for you guys on Tuesday. I can't wait for you guys to see that. Stay tuned for an announcement this weekend here about that. I'll be live tomorrow with Matt McChesney on 0 to 60, talk all that Colorado Buffaloes football news, talk a little Bill Belichick, because, we love talking about Bill Belichick on that channel, and so much more. Obviously, check out the Coach JB Show with Big Smitty. Tomorrow's Free Game Friday on the Coach JB Show with Big Smitty, and I'm going to tell you right now, just wait, because JB is going to love it, and Smitty is going to – we'll see if Smitty likes it. I don't know. I think there's a lot of great things, great Free Game Friday topics for us to talk about here on Free Game Friday tomorrow. Folks, hit that like button, subscribe, become a member. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys on Tuesday here on Baylor Price Media Live. See you guys. Enjoy your Thursday. Peace.